Isaiah Thomas to the hole. Isaiah Thomas is a machine.
Well, I feel like if you put me against anybody, I'll show you I'm not that small.
IT wide open. Like a layup.
Ahead of the field, Thomas lays it in.
Isaiah Thomas from long range.
You have to give it your all to be successful.
April 16th, 2017. Game 1 of the NBA playoffs. Boston's TD Garden was electric. 20,000 fans buzzing, cameras everywhere, the pressure, the noise, the stakes. And in the middle of it all, Isaiah Thomas sat in silence. Just 24 hours earlier, his 22-year-old sister, Chyna, had died in a fatal car crash. He didn't speak to the media, barely to his teammates. All anyone knew was, he said he was going to play. No one would have blamed him if he didn't. But Isaiah Thomas never asked for permission to show up. He dropped 33 points that night. And 2 weeks later, on what would have been Chyna's 23rd birthday, he scored 53 in a playoff game, while grieving, at 5'9". That night, he wasn't just a player. He was a symbol of heart, of fight, of something bigger than basketball. Fans cried, teammates rallied. Analysts called it one of the greatest playoff performances of the decade. But behind the highlight reels, his body was breaking. His hip, already worn down from carrying a franchise, began to tear. And the more he played through it, the worse it got. He gave Boston everything. And that summer, they traded him. Just like that, from MVP candidate to expendable. This is the story of the last pick in the draft. The 5'9" scorer who defied every scouting report. The man who once led the league in fourth quarter scoring, and then disappeared. Not because he lost his talent, but because the NBA lost its patience. Isaiah Thomas didn't burn out. He was used up. And through all of it, he kept going. Because if there's one thing Isaiah Thomas knows how to do, it's show up. Isaiah Thomas, the 5'9" MVP the NBA gave up on. Before he became an NBA star, Isaiah had to survive being invisible. In Tacoma, Washington, the game was fast, physical, and unforgiving. And at 5 feet 9 inches, on a generous day, Isaiah was always behind the curve. He heard it from coaches, scouts, even friends. You're tough, but you're too small. You're good, but not NBA good. And yet, none of that mattered when the ball tipped. Isaiah was different. He didn't just play fast, he played fearless. He attacked bigger defenders, he lived in the paint, took contact. He wasn't chasing height. He was chasing proof. That he could belong, that he was worth betting on. He earned a scholarship to the University of Washington. Started as a freshman, won Pac-10 Freshman of the Year, and in 2011, after 3 strong college seasons, he entered the NBA draft.
With the 60th pick in the 2011 NBA draft, the Sacramento Kings select Isaiah Thomas from the University of Washington.
It was 60 picks long. He went 60th. Dead last. Mr. Irrelevant. The same label he'd spent his whole life outrunning, slapped back onto him. But he didn't pout. He smiled. Because he knew something the league didn't. They didn't just overlook him. They just gave him the blueprint. The 60th pick isn't supposed to make it past training camp. Isaiah didn't just make the roster, he made noise. The Sacramento Kings were in chaos. Bad management, no identity, a revolving door of coaches. But amidst the dysfunction, Isaiah kept scoring. He didn't have the minutes, the matchups, or the media attention. He made it impossible to ignore him. He dropped 20 off the bench, ran the offense in crunch time, started stealing fourth quarter minutes from lottery picks and veterans. And by the end of his rookie year, he was starting. He made all-rookie second team. Still, Sacramento didn't fully buy in. The Kings drafted other guards, played favorites, never gave Isaiah the keys. He averaged 20 points in his 3rd season, and they let him walk. That's how little value they saw in him, and it wouldn't be the last time. Next stop, Phoenix. Traded again. Buried behind Goran Dragic and Eric Bledsoe. Another good player in the wrong situation. Until one day, his phone rang. Boston, a franchise looking for a spark, a city built for a chip-on-your-shoulder underdog. Isaiah had finally found the one thing he'd never had in the NBA, a real chance. Brad Stevens saw what other coaches didn't. Isaiah didn't need a system, he was the system. In Boston, he wasn't just a backup, he was the offense. The Celtics let him cook. High ball screens, fast pace, floor spacing, it was a perfect storm. Isaiah averaged 22 in his first full season, then 28 the next, then 29. He was 5'9" and he led the league in fourth quarter scoring. They called him King in the Fourth. Crowds chanted MVP. And it wasn't just hype. Isaiah had become a star. He made 2 All-Star teams and was an MVP candidate. And even though he still couldn't switch on defense, he gave Boston something else: grit, fearlessness, belief. He was carrying a city, one 30-point night at a time. But even as the banners rose and the lights got brighter, Isaiah's body started to break. His hip was flaring up. He was limping between games, but he kept playing because he knew something else was coming: the playoffs. And one night, that would change everything. In 2016-17, Isaiah Thomas had the season of his life, 28.9 points per game, 5th in MVP voting. The smallest player in the league was putting up numbers we hadn't seen since Allen Iverson, and he wasn't doing it quietly. He led the NBA in fourth quarter scoring. Night after night, the 5'9" guard took over games late. He dropped 44 against Memphis, 52 on the Heat, 41 on the Wizards. But it wasn't just the stats that made him special, it was the fire, the chip, the edge, the feeling that no moment was too big for him, because he'd already lived through worse. And then, things actually got worse. April 15th, 2017, one day before Game 1 of the playoffs, his younger sister Chyna was killed in a car crash. She was 22 years old. No one expected Isaiah to play. He hadn't practiced, barely spoken to the team, couldn't stop crying during warm-ups. But that night, he dropped 33. And on what would have been her birthday, he scored 53. In one of the most emotionally charged playoff games in NBA history, Isaiah turned heartbreak into legacy. And it felt like this was just the beginning. But in truth, it was the start of the end. What most fans didn't realize during the 2017 playoffs was that Isaiah wasn't just playing through grief, he was playing through injury. For months, he'd been dealing with soreness in his right hip. Team doctors cleared him to keep going, and so he did. But behind the scenes, the damage was getting worse. It was a torn labrum in his hip. Still, he pressed on. In the conference semifinals, he torched the Wizards for 53. But by the Eastern Conference Finals against Cleveland, his body gave out. Game 2, he tried, then sat out the second half, then missed the rest of the series. Season over. He'd played through the unimaginable. Pain, grief, pressure, and now he couldn't walk without limping. Isaiah needed rest, recovery, a long-term deal. He'd earned it, right? But instead of a max contract, he got silence. And then he got traded.
And then it got a little quiet. And then that's when he broke it to me. He's like, well, I just traded you.
It was the coldest moment in a career full of them. He had just led the Celtics to the Eastern Conference Finals. He played hurt. He buried his sister. He gave everything to that city. And then he was gone, traded to Cleveland in exchange for Kyrie Irving. The fans were stunned. Isaiah was crushed. They say it's a business, he later said, but that hurt. To make matters worse, Cleveland knew he was still hurt. He failed the physical. The team debated backing out of the trade, but they kept him. And when Isaiah finally suited up for the Cavs, he wasn't ready. He was slow, hesitant, couldn't push off that right hip. The magic was gone. 6 months earlier, he was a top 5 MVP finalist. Now, he was a liability. The media turned. The minutes dropped. The noise got louder. And Isaiah realized something he'd been trying to ignore. The league wasn't waiting for him. It was moving on. By the time Isaiah Thomas suited up for Cleveland, he was already in survival mode. His hip wasn't right, his body wasn't ready, but the world didn't care. All anyone saw was the name and numbers. The player who once averaged 29 points and finished 5th in MVP voting. He came back in January 2018, 6 months after surgery, and looked nothing like himself. He couldn't finish at the rim, his signature hesitation moves fell flat, defensively he was targeted on every possession, and worse, he knew it. The confidence was still there, in his voice and his posture, but the explosiveness, gone. He struggled to mesh with LeBron. The Cavs lost games. The media turned. And just 15 games into his return, they traded him to the Lakers. Another fresh start, but the same broken body. He had moments, 20-point nights, slick assists, flashes of who he used to be, but he couldn't stay healthy. And after the season, no contract offers, not even veteran minimums. From the Lakers to the Nuggets, then the Wizards, then 10-day deals in New Orleans and Charlotte, he was living suitcase to suitcase trying to prove himself on limited minutes on losing teams. He went from headliner to journeyman fast. And as the years passed, his name started disappearing from highlight reels, then from rosters, then from conversations. The league moved on, but Isaiah didn't. He trained, posted film, worked out alone in silent gyms with no scouts watching. Because to him, the story wasn't over. It just hadn't found its ending yet. Most players would have walked away, but Isaiah Thomas isn't most players. Even after the surgeries, even after the G League stints, even after the world stopped watching, he kept going. He worked out with pros, posted training footage every summer, tweeted his availability, texted GMs, took whatever opportunity he could find. In 2021, he got one, a 10-day deal with the Pelicans, then another with the Lakers. Flashes of the old IT came back. Quick bursts, fearless drives, deep threes. But the minutes were short, the leash was tight, and just as quickly as the chance came, it was gone. Again, no offers, no guarantees, just silence. But Isaiah never stopped believing that one team would finally remember who he was, because he never forgot. He didn't get the max contract. He didn't get the farewell tour. He didn't even get to finish on his own terms. But Isaiah still left a legacy. He showed that size didn't matter, that heart did. Young guards today, they credit him. Fans still wear his jersey. Players still call him a warrior. Because what he did, scoring 53 in the playoffs while mourning his sister, averaging 29 at 5'9", carrying a franchise without ever being fully embraced, can't be erased. It wasn't perfect, but it was unforgettable. Maybe he'll never get the comeback. Maybe he'll never play another NBA minute. But if he does, the world will root for him. Because the story was never about stats. It was about heart. About a player who never let go of belief, even when the league let go of him. The 60th pick, the shortest player in the league, the biggest heart on the court. Isaiah Thomas didn't just play the game, he fought it to the very end.